This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with TKM Inc. TKM stands for The King's Men. They pride themselves on being hardworking, honest, and dependable. They put an emphasis on serving Christ by serving others.
Their scope of work cover road construction, small dirt work and excavating, heavy hauling in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia.
They can be reached at 931-243-3958, and they are located at 10635 Clay County Highway, Moss, Tennessee, 38575. You can also find more information at benandtravis.com/TKM.
TKM Inc. is also a sponsor of the BATify Freedom 5K and Fun Run on July the 10th at Mars Hill Bible School. We would love for you to come run with us in person or do it virtually. You can register at benandtravis.bigcartel.com. That's benandtravis.bigcartel.com. Welcome into Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. I'm Travis Creasy with Ben Hayes, as always, coming to you from one of the coolest places that we have ever stayed. Together, separate, whatever, we're coming to you from a houseboat on Dale Hollow Lake.
Yes, and it is fantastic.
Yeah. So it's
right on the
cool.
Tennessee Kentucky line. The lake sort of is a man-made lake. If you haven't looked it up, look it up sometime. I'd never been here before, had never thought about it before, but started looking at it, and it's like this just spider web of a lake that just stretches out all over the place. But it's kind of between the Kentucky and Tennessee. It's kind of right on the line. So think maybe, not sure if the Cumberland River has something to do with it or if it feeds into something else. But anyway, just a fantastic little place. And it's beautiful. Rolling hills kind of around where we're at. Hills and valleys with cool little towns around us. So from where we're recording at the houseboat, over to the church is about 45-minute to 50-minute drive, but well worth the drive.
Beautiful drive.
Cool little towns. Celina, Tennessee, was a little town that we went through. Just really quaint little place.
Really
and
nice.
So
get to speak, talked a little Q&A tonight, get to speak a couple of times tomorrow, hanging out with a really cool congregation, had a little ice cream, that type of stuff.
I think there was actually a couple of congregations present, some that hang out with us at CYC occasionally. And so,
and of course, our wonderful guests that are joining us via the mug at the houseboat are the Golden Girls #Squad Goals mug, which I had to bust out. So it's good to have them with us.
It is really great to have them with us
for another podcast. So we're just going to talk about
Thank you for being a friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the cool places that we've stayed, whether it's mission trips or on vacation or whatever. This obviously ranks up there as one of the coolest deals.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, it really is. And, let me say our, what we get to do is just one of the coolest things anyway. Is I love to go and meet people at other churches, meet people in other towns, whether it's with, most of the time when I'm doing that, it's, we're going to different churches and speaking. I got to do that a couple of weeks ago to start the summer with my family. We went on a little tour of Missouri, and so we spent some time with some congregations, really two congregations. We were supposed to with two. COVID got in the way of one of them, but it's just some families that we love and know. And so we spent some time doing that. And then this is another one of those. We've never been here before, but we get here and it's just really cool. They let us stay in
ready to come back.
This place. So what?
We're already ready to come back.
Yeah, that's right. It's an awesome place. Gave us some, hats, some really cool T-shirts that the guy makes. And so we're just,
I was in Bridgeport the other night, Wednesday night, and there was a lady there that said, "Hey, I've signed up for the run. Hope I haven't missed it." And I was like, "Oh, it's July the 10th. You can do it virtually." So that's pretty cool. Different people around the world, around the country, doing the run, getting ready to go. And of course, we'd like for you to do that along with us.
Yeah, so. And you can do that here in the States. I think we've got some listeners in other countries. So
you
guys
feel wherever free to you
jump
find
in.
yourself. But
Don't know how you found us, but
Thinking
we're glad you
about
did.
some of the cool places that we've stayed. You mentioned a couple when we were off the air. Oh, I guess you could call it that.
Yeah, off the air.
Whatever that means. I guess one of the coolest places I've ever stayed was I went to Jamaica. And
Making me crazy.
right there on the beach. That was beautiful. It was cool. They had a guy out there selling his baubles. He's sitting out on a little, boat all day, and he'd sing a couple of songs. So that was pretty cool. And one of the other places I've been to Singapore, and like the most ritzy Holiday Inn I've ever stayed in. I think it was a Holiday Inn, but it was this high rise, and I mean, like, goes way up.
I might have stayed in that one too.
It had a deck you could step out on, and I mean, just the beautiful city of Singapore was
one of the cleanest cities in the world. I was just there for one night, on probably kind of like you were with the barriers, moving through, and probably stayed the same place, but very clean city. Amazing view. I don't remember the city real well. I think I must have been tired because that one just doesn't stand out. I remember kind of riding through the streets a little bit, but yeah, super interesting place. One trip I did that I stayed in some cool places was we did a mission trip to Scotland. Wess Howell and I went and stayed with the Gears in Scotland. But part of that trip was going to a camp, kind of like summer camp, but they would rent out a place and then they would use the space there. So instead of having like Maywood or Backwoods Bible Camp or, Camp Maribah or Wiregrass or whatever, they would go to different camps in the country, rent out the space, and then use that as the camp. So if they ran out of rooms, they had to, throw tents up in the yard. And so these two Alabama boys left the 95, 96 degree weather in July and flew to Scotland, where it's not quite as hot. And we got out immediately. They took us to the camp because the first week we were there, we were at the camp, and put us in tents. And I think it was probably like 50 or 60 degrees at night, and we were in tents. And so, not that I can't, I'm used to the cold, but I wasn't quite prepared that it was going to be that cool in the summertime. And it might not have been quite that cool, but it felt that way after coming from the 90s here. So that was pretty cool. And then on our way back, we couldn't get a flight home from Newark, New Jersey. That night when we landed, all the flights got canceled. So we started trying to call around, couldn't find a place to stay. Finally called, this was in 2000. So we called it was the World Trade Center Marriott. And so we got the opportunity to go and stay there on like the 33rd floor. And we walked in, it was Wess Howell and I with our backpacks on, blue jeans, t-shirts, ball caps, and everybody in there. It was kind of like that scene in Home Alone where Donald Trump meets him, and it's all these different people are dressed in suits, and here's this little boy going to come into this ritzy, hotel. Kind of felt like that when we walked in. They looked at us really funny, and we were like, we need 2 rooms, or we need a room with 2 beds. Went up there, had like the robes, the bathrobes hanging and stuff. It was weird. But I believe as far as I could figure out, it was one of the buildings that came down with the towers, because it was right next door to the Twin Towers. And that was a year before that happened. So that was pretty crazy that we got to experience that. So,
wow. I, on the same trip, the Singapore trip, we got to New Delhi in India, and I got to stay a night or 2. I was so jet lagged, I really couldn't remember. I enjoyed the sleep, but I was in a sleeper car on a train, and I believe it was a 24-hour train ride. And so it was like me on the top bunk. I got dibs on top bunk. And
was it a midnight train to Georgia?
No.
Oh,
in fact, we were nowhere near Georgia. I wish we kind of were closer. Of course, the heat was probably around Georgia. But anyways, and I believe it was Jeremy Barrier was sleeping beneath, it was, the bunks. And then in the same sleeper car, there was 2 people, we had no idea who they were. And,
nice.
When you're the Caucasian on a train in India, most people assume that you're there to talk a little bit about Jesus. Of course, that assumption
So
was correct.
Did you get that time? I mean, did y'all get to do that?
We
on
didn't
the
get to
train?
do
Okay.
that.
So was that a negative?
They spoke a different language
Well,
than
that's true.
us, but it was just, you could kind of get that they were a little suspicious
Gotcha.
of why we were there. And so, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. And, obviously the reasons you go on mission trips are not for the cool places, although a lot of times, even places that you don't think of as like ritzy and cool. I know, like, I heard Mike Brooks talk about staying in what basically was like a little shepherd's hut in the foothills of the Himalayas, when they'd be walking and it'd just be, just this concrete building that they'd, stay in, or block building that they would stay in. And I stayed in some places up in the foothills of the Himalayas in Nepal. And, they weren't anything special, but it was cool. The location was pretty cool. Like you were talking about, looking out over the beautiful city of Singapore, certainly cool to look out the window and see some of the mountains of the Himalayan range. Yeah. And so, it just reminds me that God has made a really, really big place. Like, the earth is just, it's huge. And you start really thinking, like, had you ever been in this part of the country where we're at right now?
No, I don't believe so.
I mean, I've been to a lot of places. I've driven through Tennessee hundreds of times, but there are so many little communities that I've never gotten to see. And this is one that...
And there's people there that have things in common with you,
Yeah.
It's just pretty cool to know. And, of course, this may not rank as some people as the coolest places to stay, but, Maywood Christian Camp, we've spent a lot of times in the cabins there. We were roommates in 112 Pharaoh Hall.
Talk about interesting
floor.
Places to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Being in a college dorm.
That is
interesting in and of
we
itself.
We kind of referenced it as the Oval Office, because we were
true.
both, presidents of Tri Zeta at some point or another. Which if you know the history there, it's no longer a club, and it's probably mainly my fault. But anyways.
Yeah, you were after me, so it wasn't my fault.
He took care of it. But anyways, a lot of good times in Pharaoh Hall that probably should stay off the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know that's something we should talk about.
Maybe in the future. But maybe on an Instagram Live. We just got off Instagram Live.
That's right.
Had some great conversation. But guys, we just wanted to holler at you, let you know some of the cool places. Be sure to email us, make a comment if you're watching the video of some cool places that you've stayed.
Yeah, and we would love to hear from you on that, and we look forward if the opportunities arise. I know there's a couple coming up in this year where we're going to get to come hang out with some different people in different places, and we're always excited about that. So we're at New Hope right now, up in as we said, somewhere around, the community is called New Hope, but here around Del Hollow Lake. And I'm going to be at New Hope Church of Christ in Florence in just a couple of, in a month or so. So I always look forward to seeing God's people, hanging out with God's people. And we always enjoy getting to kind of hang out with you guys on the podcast. So hope you guys are doing well and hope you have a great week. Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.